3 cops in uniform had me pinned against a stone column, their hands on my body, while 1,000 people inside raised their glasses to protect women from abuse. And the only thing between me and real danger was a silent security camera. I could only hope was working. Tell me something and answer this honestly. What happens to your sense of safety when the people you are told to trust are the ones cornering you in the dark? And what if I told you that the man those officers picked as their target's husband was Chuck Norris? Yeah, this is that story. My name is Gina, and I never planned to be in a video like this. But I'm going to tell you what happened. The night 3 drunk cops thought their badges made them untouchable. How my husband stopped them without throwing a single dramatic movie punch. And how the real twist wasn't the fight on the terrace, but what came after. The Hilltop Hotel sat above the woods like it thought it was better than gravity. All glass walls, polished stone, and those perfect warm lights that make rich people feel like the world outside doesn't touch them. The driveway curled up through the trees, lined with little lanterns, humming against the dark. And out front, the valets ran from black cars to silver ones, opening doors, collecting keys, smiling like they were part of a show they would never be invited to watch from a seat. Inside the lobby was all marble and soft gold, and the ballroom glowed like a jewelry box. You know the type, you know what I mean. Money, perfume, polite laughter, and a cause printed in serif font on white banners. We were there for a charity gala with a very specific mission, helping survivors of abuse committed by people in power. Cops, military bosses, guardsmen who walk into a room, ready wrapped in credibility. This wasn't some vague, let's change the world dinner. These were lawyers, advocates, social workers, people who had read case files where victims lost everything because the man who hurt them had a badge. That matters to me. It mattered to Chuck. That's why we said yes. He stepped out of our SUV the way he always does. Quiet, grounded hat brim. Low boots actually worn in, instead of bought distressed. No red carpet swagger, no entourage. Just that stillness that makes everyone around him adjust themselves a little, without knowing why. I got out behind him in a deep red dress that fit better than I wanted to admit, simple silver pendant at my throat, and suddenly it felt like the whole front entrance exhaled. People saw him, of course. Heads turned. Some eyes went wide, and then pretended they hadn't. A couple of phones came up slick and sneaky. But nobody rushed. Nobody screamed. This crowd knew how to pretend that famous people are just dear friends of the foundation, and honestly, I appreciated that. A few organizers came over, hands extended, voices warm. Thank you so much for being here. For lending your name, it means the world. They thanked me too, and I remember that, because it told me they saw me as more than a prop on his arm. We walked inside side by side like we always do. Partners, not shadow and spotlight. As we moved through the room, people nodded, offered that respectful half smile that says I know who you are, but I'm going to act normal. Chuck talked to donors about the programs they were funding, asked real questions, listened like he didn't have anywhere else to be. I watched him talk about strength in that way he does when the cameras aren't on, where it's not about kicks and stunts, but about what you choose to protect. Then came the part no one ever thinks about when they imagine a safe room. A coordinator slipped between guests a little out of breath, trying not to seem out of breath. Mr. Norris. I'm so sorry, but can I steal you for 5 minutes? We just want to confirm the timing for your speech, and the auction, make sure the cues are right. He looked at me first, always. It's a small thing until you've been with someone who never did. You good? He asked. I'm good, I told him. Go. I'm just going to stand by the terrace, get some air. I'll be right here. He did what he always does, eyes moving across exits, staff security cameras. A mental map in under 2 seconds. Nothing looked wrong. Why would it? We were surrounded by all the right costumes. Tuxedos, gowns, name tags, security blazers, polished badges on hired detail. He squeezed my hand, once nodded, and followed the coordinator. And just like that, I was alone, 20 steps from a room full of people. I walked to the tall glass doors that opened out to the terrace. When they slid shut behind me, the music dropped to a soft echo, like the band had moved underwater. The terrace itself was beautiful in that quiet, expensive way. Stone floor still holding a little warmth from the day. Low lights tracing the rail-manicured lawn, slipping into a dark tree line. It smelled like damp earth and cut grass, and too much cologne drifting in from inside. For a while, I just stood there, breathing, thinking about the stories pinned to the walls inside the women and men and families who didn't have cameras or galas or names that opened doors. Thinking about how many of them had trusted a uniform once and regretted it. I touched the pendant at my throat, a tiny personal thing no one in that room knew the meaning of, and let it anchor me. Then the air shifted. At first it was nothing, just the sense that someone else was outside. The faint crunch of gravel, a car engine, easing off on where the valets stood, but off to the left, near the trees. No siren, no lights. The kind of arrival that assumes it will not be questioned. I didn't turn right away. Maybe that sounds strange, but you learn to clock atmosphere before you move. Inside, the staff probably glanced up, saw a patrol car, and went right back to pouring champagne. Cops near a big event. Normal. Reassuring, even. Nobody thought to ask why they weren't at the front entrance. Nobody stopped them to say, "Who called you?" That silence, that assumption that is where the danger really started. I heard doors open, heard loose footsteps and off-balance laugh. Then I smelled it. Liquor cut with whatever gum or spray they'd used to hide it. I finally turned my head just a little, just enough to see 3 officers in uniform heading toward the terrace like they owned the place. Badges, guns, wrinkled shirts, smirks. "Evening, ma'am," the one in front said. And he came in too close for a stranger, close enough that I could see his pupils weren't tracking right. I put on the kind of smile women use to diffuse situations, polite, but flat. "Evening, officers. Is everything all right? Just checking on things." The second one said, though he never looked at the ballroom, never glanced at the door. His eyes were on me, slow and obvious. The third one drifted toward the glass doors, hand resting casual on the handle, like he was guarding a crime scene that didn't exist yet. Inside, no one saw that detail. Why would they? From their side of the glass, it probably looked like I was just chatting with security. I took a small step back enough to reclaim my space without making it a performance. "It's a private event," I said, friendly but clear. "We're here for a charity." "Oh, we know," the first one said. "Lots of important people. Lots of beautiful guests." The other 2 laughed, not because it was funny, but because that's how a pack signals agreement. If it were you, would you feel safe right now? Or would something in your gut start counting exits? I told them I was just getting some air and waiting for my husband, that he'd be right back and we'd be going inside. It was a boundary simple and obvious. The boundary meant nothing. "Which one's your husband?" The second asked, stepping a little closer, the heel of his boot scratching the stone. "He let you stand out here, all alone." The way he said it crawled. I didn't answer that part. "I'm fine," I said. "I'm about to go back in. Just relax." The first one murmured, and his hand landed on my shoulder like it had a right to be there. It stayed too long. I moved away. "Please don't touch me." He looked at me like he'd found a new game. The second eased into the space I'd just opened. The third at the door adjusted his stance so that to go inside, I'd have to brush right past him. That's how it works. They turn your options into a trap, then act offended when you notice. I glanced up at the dark dome of the security camera above the door. It moved just a fraction. That tiny mechanical twitch became the only thing that made sense. I answered their questions with short, neutral responses. Nothing inviting. No, I wasn't alone. Yes, it was a good cause. No, I didn't need anything. My voice was calm, because I knew that if this ever got repeated, the first thing someone would ask is, "Were you hysterical?" One more step, one more. Suddenly, they weren't 3 random cops anymore. They were a formation. One at my right shoulder, leaning against a column, one at my left, angling toward the lawn, one behind, close to the door. You didn't need training to see it. You just needed to be a woman who has walked through a parking garage at night. "Look, I'm going back inside," I said louder. "Move, please." "Now don't be like that," the first one said. "We're just talking." The second's gaze dropped down my dress and back up slowly in a way that stripped the word "ma'am" of any respect. Then came the second touch lower this time, just a friendly hand that didn't leave when it should have. It slid testing, seeing how far the badge would carry him. My stomach burned. I snapped his hand away hard enough that my bracelet bit into my wrist. "I told you not to touch me." Everything after that happened fast and slow at the same time. Their faces shifted. The fake charm peeled away. The one near the door pressed his palm a little heavier on the handle. The first one stepped in, crowding my space breath sour. "You don't want to make a scene," he said quietly. There it was. The threat dressed as advice. He shoved me not all out, just enough, my back hitting the stone, my head tapping it. Pain flashed. Anger flared hotter. The music on the other side of the glass swelled like the band had picked that exact second to get louder. Nobody inside looked over. Let me pause right here for every person who has ever asked a victim, "Why didn't you scream?" Imagine being outnumbered, cornered by men with guns, who work with the people you would be screaming for in a place where the glass between you and help seals sound out. Would you scream? Or would you do what I did? Get very, very clear. I planted my feet, put my hands up, palms out, elbows, tucked in a stance that said, "I am not attacking you, and I am not agreeing. Get away from me." I said, "Right now." The first one's hand came down to my hip with a finality that flipped the moment from harassment to something darker. The second leaned in close, his shoulder blocking half my view. The third, still at that door, a gatekeeper to the world I suddenly wasn't part of. I twisted out of his grip, shoved him with everything I'd been holding back. He stumbled, surprised that I didn't just take it. For half a second, all 3 froze. Men like that don't expect resistance. They expect fear. The third stepped away from the door, finally not to help me, but to complete the circle. 3 armed drunk officers, 1 woman in a red dress, pressed against a column, while a charity about victims of power hummed along 10 yards away. Then, in the glass beside them, behind the blur of their shoulders, I saw something that changed everything. A reflection. Hat brim. Square shoulders. A walk I know better than anyone. Chuck. He was just inside the lobby, framed by that golden light, moving at a normal pace. Nothing exaggerated but locked in. His head tilted once as he took in the scene beyond the glass. I saw it in the reflection before they did. The tiniest twist of fate. Here's the twist. If you think this is the part where he storms out like an action hero in slow motion, you're wrong. He didn't kick the doors open. He didn't shout. What he did was more terrifying than any stunt. The glass door opened with a soft hiss. Footsteps on stone. Slow. Even. Every one of them loud to me. The first cop, the one who'd had his hand on me, turned with his mouth already open, ready to put someone in their place. Then he saw who it was. Chuck stopped just far enough away that they had to choose to approach him if they wanted trouble. His hat shadowed his eyes. But I've seen that look. It's the one he gets when he already knows what happened and is giving you one chance to tell the truth. "Step away from my wife," he said. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The cop's hand dropped from the air like it suddenly got heavy. "We were just talking," he said. Slurring a little, Chuck's eyes flicked to me, then to where my shoulder had hit the stone, then up to the camera, then back to the three of them. It took him all of 2 seconds to map the entire situation. Positions, distances, hands, holsters, breath, posture. "Is that true?" he asked. Still calm. It hung there. The second one tried to take a step toward him, like he wanted to puff himself back up. "Back off, sir. This is police business." "Wrong sentence." "Last chance," Chuck said. Back away from her. You could feel the line in the air. Either they were smart enough to step down, or they were drunk enough to step up. The second chose wrong. He moved in hand, coming up maybe to point, maybe to grab, maybe just to feel bigger. That was it. In one smooth movement, Chuck caught his wrist, turned it, and redirected his weight down. No extra force, no dramatic spin. The guy hit the tile with a sharp, ugly grunt. Out of the picture. The first lunged slower than he probably thought he was. Chuck sidestepped, caught his collar and arm, and walked him right into the terrace railing hard enough to fold him over and drop him. No flourish. No speech. The third hesitated hand, hovering, near his gun. Let me tell you that half-second felt like an hour. Chuck saw it. I saw it. The camera saw it. The cop's fingers went for the snap. Chuck shut it down before it even clicked. He stepped in, struck the arm down with that precise, controlled motion I've watched him train for decades, turned the guy's balance, and put him on the ground with the weapon still in the holster. 3 men. 3 uniforms. 3 badges. All breathing. All conscious. All stripped of the control they'd been so sure of 2 minutes earlier. And that's when everybody else finally decided to notice. The ballroom door opened. Staff flooded out, eyes wide. Hotel security in their blazers. The event director pale. A few guests rubbernecking over each other's shoulders. "What happened? Is everyone all right?" I spoke before anyone else could rewrite it. They cornered me. They put their hands on me. It's all on your cameras. Silence. The kind that crawls. Security moved in tight, not around us, but around them. One of the guards muttered into his radio. "Get me outside law enforcement, not their precinct, now!" And right here, is where the real twist starts. Stick around because what happened next will blow your mind. Down in the hotel's security room, someone pulled up the terrace feed. They watched those 3 walk in from the dark, watched the circle tighten, watched the touches, the shove my hands up. Chuck's arrival. The takedowns. No missing frames, no blind spots. No way to spin it into misunderstood. The hotel's legal liaison, one of the women working with the charity's legal team, leaned in closer to the screen. I'm told she went very quiet. "I know that one," she said, pointing at the face of one of the officers. "We've had his name come up before. While we were upstairs giving our statements, officers from another district arrived. They did not look happy, and not because of us. They saw 3 of their own in uniform eyes, bloodshot, breath-hot weapons on their hips, on camera, harassing a woman at a gala about abuse of power. They ran breath tests, collected guns, took badges. They read them their rights. And in those few hours between midnight and dawn, something shifted that had nothing to do with celebrity and everything to do with evidence. The Foundation's legal team started making calls the careful, quiet kind. Old complaints that had gone nowhere suddenly didn't look so unsubstantiated. A bartender who remembered being grabbed. A motel clerk who had reported an incident and watched it disappear. A paramedic who'd left a voicemail about inappropriate behavior on a call that no one ever returned. A woman who had left a traffic stop in tears and been told no one would believe her. Same names. If it were just me on that terrace, no cameras, no Chuck, no fancy guests. Do you honestly think any of this would have made it past that night? Or would it have been my word against 3 badges back in the private suite they gave us? I sat by the window wrapped in a blanket someone had insisted I take. The adrenaline had worn off, leaving that hollow, buzzing exhaustion. Outside, the last red and blue flashes faded away down the hill. Chuck sat close enough that I could feel him there, but he didn't crowd. He didn't tell me how to feel. People think strength is big speeches. Sometimes it's just silence that doesn't rush you. After a while, I said it the thing that had been forming since the second shove against the stone. It can't just end with them getting arrested. He nodded once. I know, because let's be real. 3 guys in cuffs makes a headline. It doesn't fix a system. It doesn't help the woman with no cameras, no gala, no husband. Anyone recognizes. It doesn't protect the next person who meets a man like that in an elevator or a back road. Over the next days, the story hit the press. But most outlets grabbed the easiest angle. 3 cops harass Chuck Norris's wife. Chuck takes them down. It was loud and simple and wrong in all the ways that matter. We turned down interview after interview. They wanted a show. We wanted change. In the background with the foundation, we started building something bigger. A dedicated program focused on abuse committed by authority figures. A place where if you said it was a cop, they wouldn't flinch or redirect you. Independent investigators. Lawyers who know how to hold institutions to their own policies. Agreements with shelters. A direct line to people who could lock down body cam footage and security video before it went missing. It wasn't about making me the face of anything. I didn't want my worst night to be a brand. I wanted it to be leverage, and people pushed back. Oh, they did. You're attacking law enforcement. You're painting all cops as monsters. They just made a mistake. It's funny how fast some folks will defend a uniform over a human being they watched get cornered on camera. Do you think that's fair? That asking for accountability is the same thing as hatred. Here's what I believe, and you can fight me in the comments if you want. Good cops hate this more than anyone. Because every time a department buries stories like this, every time a badge is treated like a shield instead of a responsibility, it drags down the people who are actually out there doing it right. The investigation dug deeper into those 3. Patterns emerged. Messages. Prior complaints. People who finally felt safe enough to add their stories now that they knew someone important had watched what those men really did when they thought no one would stop them. Charges followed. Real ones. Not administrative leave. Their badges and guns became evidence tags instead of symbols. Is that enough? No. But it was a start. The foundation launched the new initiative at that same hotel some weeks later. Same ballroom, same polished floors. Different energy. Survivors stood with lawyers and advocates with actual resources behind them. Chuck stood in the crowd, not on stage. I spoke briefly not about the terrace, but about contracts. The contract we pretend exists between the public and the people we hand power to. You do not get to hide behind a badge, I said. You stand behind it, where we can see you, or you don't wear it. Some people in that room shifted in their seats. Some nodded. Some frowned. Good, because the ending of this story is not clean, and it should not make everybody comfortable. We didn't sue the department for some giant payout. We didn't go on a revenge tour. We pushed for policy for independent review for collaboration between the initiative and departments that were willing to confront their own rot instead of paint over it. And yet, to this day, there are people who say they lost their jobs over flirting, or she was exaggerating, or it only blew up because she is married to Chuck Norris. So let me put this directly to you. If there had been no cameras, if I had been a waitress taking a break, or a guest whose husband wasn't famous, and I came forward with the exact same story, would you have believed me over 3 officers with a clean report on file? Or would you have shrugged and called it a misunderstanding? If your answer makes you uncomfortable, sit with that. The last morning we checked out of Hilltop. The hotel looked exactly the same. Same stone, same glass, same trees. As we walked to the car, I veered off for a second toward the terrace. No guests, no music, just early light on empty chairs. I put my hand on that column one more time. It didn't feel like the place I was trapped anymore. It felt like the place where a line got drawn. Not because my husband can handle himself in a fight, but because for once the cameras were on the right, people were watching, and we refused to let the story end at, well, at least they got arrested. So here's how I'm going to end this. And I want you to answer, not just scroll. Do you think independent oversight for law enforcement should be standard everywhere, every time there is an accusation like this? Do you believe we should have laws that make it impossible to quietly bury footage when an officer crosses a line? Have you ever had an experience where someone used their job, their status, their title to make you feel small, and no one believed you? Tell me. Put it in the comments. Argue with me if you have to. If you wear a badge and you're doing it right, tell people what accountability looks like from your side. If you've ever stayed quiet because you thought no one would take your word over someone important, I'm asking you, share as much as you're ready to. Hit! Like if you think power should never be a free pass shared. This so people remember that justice can start in one ugly moment on a pretty terrace. And subscribe if you want more stories that don't stop at revenge, but dig into what has to change. Because stopping 3 men on one night was the easy part. The real fight is making sure no one ever gets to look at a uniform and think, now I can do whatever I want. And that conversation starts with you.